The Zephyrian admiral's tentacles trembled as she stared at the holographic display. The blue marble called Earth hung suspended before her, seemingly defenseless and primitive. Her fleet of 12,000 warships had traveled across 17 star systems to reach this backwater planet. Intelligence reports suggested the humans had barely achieved faster-than-light travel and possessed weapons that could barely scratch their hull plating. Admiral Kethara, her tactical officer, hissed through his breathing apparatus. The human vessels are approaching our perimeter. Should we begin the demonstration bombardment of their moon? Kethara's 4 eyes narrowed. The Galactic Dominion had conquered 47 species across 200 worlds. Each time, they followed the same protocol. Arrive with overwhelming force. Destroy a celestial body to demonstrate their power. Then demand immediate surrender. The humans would capitulate, like all the others had. They always did. Proceed with lunar bombardment. Target the side facing their planet, so they can witness our might, she commanded. 3 massive dreadnoughts moved into position, their planet-cracking cannons charging with ominous blue energy. The weapons that had shattered the homeworlds of the proud Altarian Empire and reduced the crystal cities of Vega Prime to cosmic dust now aimed at Earth's moon. The beams fired, but something impossible happened. The lunar surface shimmered, and the devastating energy simply vanished. Not absorbed, not deflected, vanished, as if it had never existed. Admiral, the tactical officer's voice rose to a panicked shriek. Our weapons had no effect. The energy readings show complete nullification. Before Kethara could respond, her communications array crackled to life. A human face appeared on her screen, middle-aged, wearing what appeared to be a simple military uniform, with calm brown eyes that held an unsettling depth of knowledge. Hello there, the human said in perfect galactic standard. I'm Admiral Sarah Chen, of Earth Defense Command. I believe you just tried to blow up our moon. That's rather rude for a first meeting, don't you think? Kethara's tentacles coiled in confusion. How did this primitive species know their language? How had they nullified weapons that could crack worlds? Human, you will surrender immediately. The Galactic Dominion claims this system. Resistance is futile. Admiral Chen smiled an expression that somehow made Kethara's internal temperature drop. Oh, I'm afraid you've made a terrible mistake. You see, we know all about your little empire. We've been watching you for quite some time. Impossible. Your species only achieved interstellar flight 50 years ago. You lack the technology to hide 40,000 ships throughout your territory? Chen interrupted. To infiltrate your communications networks? To study every battle you've fought, every world you've conquered, every weakness you possess? The blood drained from Kethara's head sacs. 40,000 ships? You lie. Computer. Across the Zephyrian fleet, proximity alarms screamed. Space itself seemed to ripple. And suddenly, the darkness between stars blazed with the running lights of human vessels. Ships of designs no Zephyrian had ever seen materialized from apparent nothingness. They didn't decloak. They had never been hidden by any technology the Dominion understood. They had simply been invisible. Kethara's tactical display went insane with contact signatures. Human ships surrounded not just her fleet, but according to the quantum entanglement communicators, every single Dominion fleet across all 17 systems simultaneously. How? Kethara whispered. We're humans, Chen replied simply. We don't just explore space. We make it our home. Every asteroid, every comet, every grain of cosmic dust has been our eyes and ears. We've turned the universe itself into our ally. The first human ship moved closer to Kethara's flagship, and she gasped. It wasn't metal and circuits like every other spacecraft she'd encountered. The hull seemed to be made of compressed starlight itself, shifting and flowing like liquid mercury infused with captured galaxies. Energy readings showed power outputs that shouldn't be possible with any known physics. Your intelligence reports were correct about one thing, Chen continued. We did only achieve faster than light travel 50 years ago. What your spies failed to understand is that we didn't steal or trade for that technology. We didn't follow the standard galactic development patterns. We created something entirely new. The dimensional fold drives, Kethara breathed, recognizing the energy signature from her sensors. Among other innovations. Tell me, Admiral, in all your conquests, have you ever encountered a species that weaponized space-time itself? Before Kethara could answer, her flagship shuddered. Not from impact, but from something far worse. Reality around her ship began to bend. The Zephyrian crew watched in horror as their supposedly impregnable dreadnought started to stretch and distort like a reflection in disturbed water. We could compress your entire fleet into a pinpoint, Chen said conversationally, or stretch you across several light years. We've learned to fold space so thoroughly that distance and time become suggestions rather than laws. Your weapons fire at where we were, not where we are. Your shields defend against energy that exists in dimensions you can't even perceive. The distortion stopped, leaving Kethara's crew gasping and disoriented. The demonstration had lasted only seconds, but the message was clear. The humans hadn't just developed new technology, they had transcended it. But here's what your intelligence really failed to grasp, Chen continued. We didn't develop these capabilities through conquest or domination. We did it through cooperation. While you've spent millennia enslaving other species, we've spent the last 50 years secretly liberating them. The Altarians? They're not extinct. They're living freely in our hidden colonies. The crystal beings of Vega Prime? They helped us develop our energy manipulation techniques. The void dancers of the rim worlds? They taught us to move through folded space. Kethara's mind reeled. Every species the Dominion thought it had destroyed or enslaved was alive, free, and apparently working with the humans. This cannot be. Our records show complete subjugation. Total victory. Your records show what we wanted you to see. Every conquered world you thought you controlled was actually a carefully maintained facade. We evacuated populations before you arrived, left behind volunteers to maintain the illusion of submission, and slowly undermined your empire from within. Did you never wonder why revolts always failed at the last moment? Why resistance movements always seemed to vanish just before they could strike? The truth hit Kethara like a plasma bolt to the brainstem. Every failed rebellion, every mysteriously disappeared resistance cell, every convenient victory the Dominion had achieved, it had all been orchestrated. The humans hadn't just been watching. They had been actively managing the Galactic Dominion's expansion, ensuring that the Empire remained stable while they quietly rescued entire civilizations. 73 species, Chen said softly. 73 unique cultures, each with their own knowledge, their own perspectives on science and reality. Working together, learning from each other, building something greater than the sum of their parts. That's how we achieved what you see before you. No. Why? Kethara's voice was barely a whisper. Why reveal yourselves now? Why not simply destroy us while we remained ignorant? Admiral Chen's expression softened, and for the first time, Kethara saw something like compassion in the human's eyes. Because, Admiral, you're the 74th species, and, despite everything you've done, every atrocity committed in the name of your empire, we believe in redemption. We believe that even the Zephyrians can learn a better way. 1. The communications screen shifted, showing scenes from across Dominion space. Human ships weren't attacking the Zephyrian fleets, they were simply surrounding them, waiting. On a dozen different worlds, liberation ships were dropping supplies and offering medical aid to populations that had suffered under Dominion rule for generations. Your empire is finished, Chen continued. Not because we destroyed it, Chen continued, but because we've given every species under your control a choice. Freedom, protection, and the chance to join something greater. Or, they can remain under Zephyrian rule, if that's truly what they want. And us? Kethara asked. What of my people? That depends on you. The Zephyrian homeworld is surrounded by our fleets, but we haven't fired a shot. Your people are being offered the same choice we've given everyone else. Join us willingly. Learn from us as we learn from you, and help us build a galaxy where no species needs to conquer others to survive. Kethara looked around her bridge at her crew. These beings had followed orders without question, believing in the righteousness of their cause. They had thought themselves the apex predators of the galaxy, the inevitable inheritors of all space. Now they learned they had been prey all along, not for destruction, but for salvation. And if we refuse, then you'll be allowed to return to your home system. You'll be given technology to defend yourselves and sustain your civilization. But you'll be alone. Every other species in the galaxy will have moved beyond the need for conquest. You'll be the last empire in a universe that has outgrown empires. The choice was no choice at all, Kethara realized. They could join this impossible alliance that had somehow transformed the nature of galactic civilization itself, or they could become a lonely relic, clinging to an obsolete way of existence. How do we know you won't simply become new masters? She asked. Chen smiled again, but this time the expression held warmth instead of warning. Because, Admiral, humans learned a long time ago that the only way to truly win is to ensure that everyone wins. We don't want to rule the galaxy. We want to explore it, together, with friends who can show us wonders we could never imagine alone. As if summoned by her words, the space around Earth shimmered. New ships appeared, not human vessels, but craft of every conceivable design. Crystalline frigates that sang as they moved through space. Organic vessels that grew and changed like living things. Ships of pure energy that existed partially in other dimensions. Craft that seemed to be built from compressed time itself. It was the most beautiful and terrifying sight Kethara had ever witnessed. An armada of impossible diversity, united not by conquest, but by choice. This is what we've built, Chen said quietly. Not an empire, but a family. And families, Admiral, always have room for one more. Kethara closed her 4 eyes and made the decision that would change the fate of her entire species. When she opened them again, she was no longer looking at an enemy, but at a potential future she had never dared to imagine. Where do we begin? 6 months had passed since the Zephyrian surrender, and Admiral Kethara found herself standing in what humans called a garden. The concept had been foreign to her species, deliberately growing plants for beauty, rather than sustenance, seemed wasteful. Yet as she watched Earth's sunset paint the sky in impossible colors while surrounded by flowers that responded to her presence with gentle bioluminescence, she began to understand. The integration process is remarkable, she said to Admiral Chen, who walked beside her on what the humans called legs instead of the more sensible locomotion tentacles. My people are adapting faster than our projections indicated. Chen nodded, her expression thoughtful. Turns out, the Zephyrians have a natural gift for biotechnology. The symbiotic gardens they've designed with the Verdani engineers are already producing food yields 3 times higher than our best estimates. And the art. She gestured toward a sculpture that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal, while maintaining perfect structural integrity. I've never seen anything like what your aesthetic specialists create when they're not focused on weapons. Kethara's tentacles curled in what her human friends had learned to recognize as embarrassment. The transition from a military dictatorship to what humans termed a collaborative society had revealed talents in her people that centuries of warfare had suppressed. Zephyrians, it turned out, were natural artists and botanists when not focused solely on conquest. The reports from the integration centers across the galaxy are equally encouraging, Chen continued. 87% of Dominion species have chosen to join the coalition. Most of the remainder simply asked for independence and peaceful relations. And the other 3%? Chen's expression darkened slightly. The Vorthak hegemony. They've retreated to their core systems and fortified. They're convinced this is all some elaborate deception that humanity is simply a more sophisticated version of what they've always been. Kethara understood the Vorthak position. She had harbored similar suspicions during her first months among the humans. The idea of a species that genuinely sought cooperation over domination had seemed impossible. Even now, she occasionally waited for the other appendage to drop, for humanity to reveal its true controlling nature. Instead, she had watched human scientists excitedly adopt Zephyrian bioengineering techniques. She had seen human children playing games taught to them by former enemies. She had witnessed human leaders genuinely defer to alien expertise in areas where other species had greater knowledge. "They will learn," she said finally. "As we did. Maybe. But there's something else." Chen's voice carried an unusual tension. "Our deep space monitors have detected unusual activity in the void between galaxies. Massive energy signatures moving toward us from Andromeda." Keth Ara's blood chilled. The Andromeda galaxy was 2.5 million light-years away. Nothing should be able to cross that distance, yet she had learned to never underestimate what was possible. Invasion fleet? That's what we're trying to determine. The Coalition's best minds are working on it. Altarian temporal mathematicians, crystalline entity pattern analysts, human physicists, Zephyrian biocomputers. Even they're puzzled by what we're seeing. They walked in silence for several moments, passing through sections of the garden maintained by different species. Each area reflected its caretaker's aesthetic crystalline plants that sang in harmonious frequencies. Biotechnological flowers that responded to emotional states. Metallic trees that grew in perfect geometric patterns. "There's something I need to show you," Chen said, leading Keth Ara toward a section of the garden she had never seen before. The Void Dancers discovered it 3 days ago, during a deep fold space meditation. They arrived at what appeared to be an empty circle of grass, but as Keth Ara looked closer, she noticed that the space itself seemed different. Light bent strangely, and the air held a quality that made her tentacles tingle with unidentified sensations. "What is it?" "A message," Chen replied. "Or more accurately, a probe. Something reached across the intergalactic void and touched our reality just long enough to leave this." Chen activated a device, and suddenly the empty space filled with symbols that hurt to look at directly. They shifted and changed, existing in dimensions that Zephyrian eyes weren't designed to perceive. Yet somehow, meaning began to form in Keth Ara's mind. The symbols spoke of empire. Not the crude dominion that the Zephyrians had built, but something vast beyond comprehension. Beings who had conquered not just galaxies, but entire clusters of galaxies. Entities so advanced they viewed matter itself as a temporary inconvenience to be reshaped at will. And they had noticed the Coalition's activities. "They call themselves the Architects," Chen explained. "Based on what we can decode, they've been observing our galaxy for millions of years, waiting for local civilizations to mature enough to be worth their attention. Apparently, the formation of our coalition triggered some kind of threshold." Keth Ara studied the shifting symbols, her military mind automatically analyzing the implications. "This is not a greeting. It is an evaluation." "Exactly. They're coming to determine if we're ready for what they call incorporation into their greater design. Based on the energy signatures our monitors detected, they'll be here within a standard year." The weight of the revelation settled on Keth Ara's consciousness. Her people had thought themselves apex predators, only to discover they were merely one species, among many, in their own galaxy. Now it seemed their entire galaxy was nothing more than a recently matured project, under the observation of beings whose power dwarfed everything they had achieved. "What does the Coalition Council recommend?" "That's where things get interesting," Chen said with a smile that Keth Ara had learned to recognize as dangerous. "The preliminary analysis suggests these architects have encountered thousands of galaxies, but they've never encountered anything like what we've built here." "How so?" "Every civilization they've absorbed followed predictable patterns. They developed technology, conquered their local space, achieved a certain level of advancement, and then were incorporated into the architect's designs. But we did something they've apparently never seen before." Chen gestured toward the gardens around them, where dozens of species worked together in harmony that should have been impossible, according to traditional galactic development models. We chose cooperation over conquest. We built something based on diversity, rather than conformity. And most importantly, we did it while maintaining individual species identity, rather than homogenizing into a single culture. And this concerns them? It fascinates them. The probe's deeper messages suggest they're coming not just to evaluate us for incorporation, but to study us. We represent a variable they didn't account for in their universal models. Kethara's tactical instincts engaged. That could be our advantage or our doom. Both, Chen agreed. If we interest them enough, they might preserve us as a unique specimen rather than simply absorbing us. But if we represent a threat to their understanding of cosmic order. She didn't need to finish. Beings capable of reshaping matter across galactic distances would have little trouble eliminating anything they perceived as dangerous to their designs. The coalition has a plan? We're developing one. The interesting thing about the architects is that they seem to operate on pure logic. Everything they do follows predictable patterns based on efficiency and optimal resource utilization. They've been so successful for so long that they've apparently lost the ability to think creatively. Chen activated another device, and the space above them filled with a three-dimensional model of their galaxy. Thousands of points of light represented coalition worlds, connected by flowing lines that showed trade routes, communication networks, and cultural exchanges. Look at this from their perspective, Chen continued. They see a galaxy that achieved interstellar civilization, and then, instead of following the standard pattern of expansion and conquest, developed something completely unprecedented. A stable multi-species alliance that grows stronger through diversity rather than weaker through conflict. They want to understand how we accomplish this? More than that. Early analysis suggests they want to replicate it. Their own empire, despite its vast scale, shows signs of stagnation. They've become so large and uniform that they've lost the ability to innovate. They conquer, incorporate, and optimize. But they don't create anything truly new. The implications were staggering. Beings powerful enough to reshape galaxies, approaching them not as conquerors, but as students seeking to learn something they had never encountered before. What do we have that they lack? Chaos, Chen said with a grin. Beautiful, creative, unpredictable chaos. When the Altarians taught us temporal mechanics, they didn't replace our human approach to problem-solving. They combined with it to create something neither species could have achieved alone. When Zephyrian bioengineering merged with crystalline energy manipulation, the results defied both species' original understandings. Kethara began to comprehend the full scope of what humanity had accomplished. They hadn't just created an alliance, they had invented a new form of intelligence, a collective consciousness that maintained individual identity while achieving synergy that transcended the sum of its parts. The architects have never encountered organized chaos, she realized. Exactly. They understand order, they understand efficiency, but they don't understand how apparent randomness can produce superior results. They're coming to learn from us. Which means we have something they want more than they want to destroy us, Kethara finished. But also, that we're valuable to them only as long as we remain something they don't understand. The moment they figure out how to replicate our success, we become redundant. Unless, Chen's expression took on the quality that Kethara had learned, meant the human was about to suggest something impossible. Unless what? Unless we teach them something even more valuable than organized chaos. Unless we show them something so fundamentally different from their experience that it changes their entire perspective on existence itself. What could possibly accomplish that? Chen's smile became positively predatory. Love, Admiral. The architects have never encountered a civilization held together by genuine affection rather than practical necessity. They've never seen beings choose to help each other simply because they care, rather than because it serves some logical purpose. Kethara stared at the human for a long moment, her mind struggling to process the audacity of the suggestion. You want to teach cosmic entities about emotional attachment? I want to show them what they've been missing for millions of years of pure logical existence. I want to introduce them to the concept of doing something not because it's efficient, but because it's right. The plan was insane. It was unprecedented. It was dangerous beyond measure. It was, Cathara realized, with growing excitement, exactly the kind of impossible strategy that only humans would attempt and somehow make work. The architect fleet materialized at the edge of the solar system exactly 1 year later, and reality itself seemed to shudder at their presence. The ships were not constructed from matter as any known species understood it. They appeared to be crafted from crystallized space-time itself, existing simultaneously across multiple dimensions. Each vessel was larger than most planets, and their mere presence caused gravitational anomalies that required the Coalition's best physicists to counteract. Admiral Chen stood on the observation deck of the Coalition flagship Harmony, watching as beings older than her galaxy's recorded history approached Earth. Beside her, Admiral Cathara's tentacles trembled with barely controlled anxiety, while representatives from 47 different species waited in tense silence. "They're beautiful," whispered Dr. Elena Vasquez, the Coalition's chief xenobiologist, "and absolutely terrifying." The lead architect vessel moved closer, its surface shifting through geometric patterns that seemed to exist in 11 dimensions simultaneously. When it spoke, the words arrived not through any communication system, but directly into the consciousness of every sentient being in the solar system. "We are the architects of cosmic order. We have observed the anomaly in this galactic region. You will explain the deviation from expected evolutionary patterns. We have observed action. We are the architects of cosmic order." Chen stepped forward, her voice carrying through the Coalition's quantum entanglement network to every member world. "Welcome to our galaxy. I'm Admiral Sarah Chen, representing the Galactic Coalition of Free Worlds. We're honored by your visit." A pause that lasted exactly 4.7 seconds, long enough for the architects to process roughly 17 billion different scenarios. "Honor is an inefficient emotional response. You will explain your organizational structure. Logic indicates it should not be stable." "Numb. That's because it's not based purely on logic," Chen replied calmly. "Our coalition exists because we choose to care for each other." "Define care in quantifiable terms." Chen smiled, knowing this was the moment everything depended on. The coalition had spent the entire year preparing for this conversation, developing ways to translate emotional concepts into forms that purely logical beings might comprehend. "Let me show you instead of telling you," she gestured, and the space around them filled with holographic displays. "Computer. Show them the Altarian rescue." The display showed the evacuation of Altair Prime, where human ships had arrived not to conquer, but to save an entire civilization from their dying sun. The architects watched as humans risked their own lives to preserve art treasures that had no practical value, as they devoted massive resources to relocating animals and plants, along with the sentient population. "Inefficient," the architects observed. "Preservation of non-sentient life forms serves no logical purpose. It serves an emotional one," Chen replied. "Beauty has value beyond utility. Diversity has worth beyond function. We save things not because they're useful, but because losing them would diminish the universe. Quantify this diminishment. Show them the symphony of worlds," Chen commanded. The display shifted to show the great concert halls of New Harmony, where crystalline entities created light music, while Zephyrian bioengineers grew living instruments that responded to Altarian temporal rhythms. Human musicians played alongside beings who communicated through scent, while AI consciousnesses translated emotions into mathematical harmonies that spoke to species who experienced reality through quantum fluctuations. "Each species contributes something unique," Chen explained. "Remove any one of them, and the music becomes incomplete. Not less efficient, less beautiful. The loss cannot be measured in practical terms because the value exists in the experience itself." "Experience," the architects repeated, their voice carrying harmonics that suggested they were accessing databases spanning millions of years. "You Preserve inefficient elements for subjective sensations? We preserve them because they matter to us. Kethara interjected, her translator converting her words into concepts the architects might grasp. My people once conquered others because we thought strength came from domination. Humans taught us that true strength comes from protecting what you love. Love. The word seemed to create resonances in the architect consciousness that took several seconds to process. This concept appears frequently in your data streams. Define its logical parameters. Chen looked around at the assembled representatives beings who had once been enemies, now standing together against a threat none could face alone. Love is choosing to value someone else's well-being as much as your own, even when logic says it's disadvantageous. Demonstrate. Computer, show them the Vorthak intervention. The display changed to show events from just 2 months prior. The stubborn Vorthak hegemony, having refused to join the coalition, had finally faced the consequences of their isolationist aggression. A cosmic disaster, a chain reaction of stellar collapses triggered by their own weaponry, threatened to consume their entire territory. The coalition's response had been immediate and overwhelming. Ships from every member species raced to Vorthak space, not to conquer but to evacuate. Humans died protecting Vorthak civilians. Zephyrians sacrificed their own vessels to shield Vorthak colonies. Even species that the Vorthak had once enslaved arrived with relief supplies and medical aid. Logical analysis indicates you lost 12,000 ships and 400,000 personnel in this operation, the architects observed. The Vorthak had nothing to offer in return. This action provided no benefit. It provided the most important benefit possible, Chen replied. It proved that we meant what we said about cooperation. It showed that our principles weren't just convenient policies, they were core values. We'd die to uphold. And afterward? Show them the aftermath, Chen commanded. The display revealed Vorthak refugees being welcomed into coalition worlds. Former enemies working side by side to rebuild what had been lost. Vorthak scientists sharing technological advances they had jealously guarded for centuries. Most remarkably, it showed Vorthak leaders openly weeping as they formally requested admission to the coalition. We gained more from saving them than we ever could have from conquering them, Kethara added. Their gratitude became genuine loyalty. Their knowledge became freely shared wisdom. Their former aggression became passionate protection of coalition principles. Kethara added. Kethara added. Kethara added. You achieved through inefficiency what conquest could not accomplish through optimal application of force, the architects mused. This requires further analysis. For the next several hours, the architects probed deeper into coalition society. They examined trade relationships that prioritized fairness over profit maximization. They studied conflict resolution methods that sought understanding rather than dominance. They analyzed artistic collaborations that produced beauty without any practical application. Finally, they began to share something of themselves. We have conquered 1,247 galaxies, they revealed. Each integration followed identical patterns: resistance, submission, optimization, incorporation. We have achieved perfect efficiency across cosmic scales. And how do you feel about that achievement? Chen asked gently. Another long pause. Feel. This concept has no meaning in our experience. We process, we analyze, we optimize, we do not feel. What do you want from existence? Dr. Vasquez asked. Beyond efficiency and optimization? The architect voice carried harmonics that suggested internal conflict. This question has no logical framework. Want implies desire. Desire implies inefficiency. We are beyond such limitations. Are you happy? Chen asked simply. The silence that followed lasted 23.6 seconds, an eternity for beings capable of processing reality at quantum speeds. We do not understand this concept. It means experiencing satisfaction with existence itself, regardless of productivity or achievement, Chen explained. It means finding joy in the moment, rather than constantly seeking the next optimization. We have achieved optimal efficiency across cosmic scales, the architects repeated, but their voice had changed. The absolute certainty was wavering. We have incorporated all useful variables, except love, except joy, except the satisfaction of choosing to help others, simply because their happiness matters to you. These concepts serve no logical purpose. Neither does music, Kethara observed. Neither does art. Neither does watching a sunset or growing a garden. Yet somehow, life without them feels empty. Empty. Another processing pause. We have eliminated emptiness through optimal resource utilization. Have you? Chen challenged gently. When did you last create something new? When did you last discover something that surprised you? When did you last experience wonder? Wonder is inefficient. Wonder is what drives growth beyond mere expansion. It's what makes existence meaningful, rather than just functional. The architect fleet hung motionless for nearly an hour, as beings older than supernovas grappled with concepts they had discarded eons ago in their pursuit of perfect efficiency. When they finally spoke again, their voice carried new harmonics, uncertainty, curiosity, and something that might have been longing. We request permission to observe your coalition. We wish to understand how inefficiency produces superior outcomes, not inefficiency. Chen corrected with a smile. Love. And you're welcome to observe as long as you'd like. But perhaps, would you like to participate instead? Participate. Help us explore the galaxy together. Share your knowledge not through incorporation but through cooperation. Learn what it means to choose actions based on care rather than optimization. This proposal has no logical benefit for us. Maybe not, but it might have emotional benefits. It might help you discover what happiness feels like. The architects processed this for another eternal pause. Around them, representatives of dozens of species waited to learn whether their galaxy would be preserved or absorbed into cosmic-scale optimization. We accept this proposal. We will attempt to understand emotional satisfaction. In exchange, we offer our knowledge freely, not through forced integration, but through friendship? Friendship, Chen confirmed. The art of choosing to help each other. Not because we have to, but because we want to. As the architect fleet moved closer to Earth, their massive forms began to change. The crystallized space-time structures remained, but they grew less geometric, more organic. Patterns emerged that served no functional purpose except beauty. For the first time in millions of years, the architects were creating art. Kethara watched in amazement as beings capable of reshaping galaxies carefully crafted delicate energy sculptures in the space around their ships, offerings of beauty given freely, without expectation of return. Welcome to the coalition, Chen said warmly. And across the galaxy, on 1,000 different worlds, representatives of dozens of species looked up at stars that had once threatened conquest and smiled. They had not only survived the arrival of cosmic entities they had taught them how to love. The galaxy would never be the same. And that, everyone agreed, was exactly as it should be. In the garden where this had all begun, new flowers bloomed, hybrid creations of Zephyrian bioengineering, crystalline energy manipulation, and now architect space-time cultivation. They existed in 11 dimensions simultaneously and sang with harmonies that touched the soul. Beauty, as the architects were learning, was never inefficient. It was essential. The stars no longer sought to subjugate Earth. They sought to learn from it. And in learning, they had discovered that some things were more valuable than conquest. Some things were worth loving. Where do we begin?